What is up, guys?
My name is Kointrick, and I am taking over 24 Concept.
Whoa. Did you guys see that? That was weird. Okay, cut the We're here for the Apple event, so let's go. First up, Apple started off the presentation with Apple TV Plus and some sneak peeks at some upcoming shows and movies, but most notably, exclusively showing Friday night MLB match coverage, which I guess is cool if baseball is your thing. Baseball is not my thing. Next up was iPhone. No, nothing about iPhone 14 this time, but we are getting the iPhone 13 in two new colors, green for the iPhone 13 and Alpine green for the 13 Pro. What's the difference? Well, the standard green is more of a glossy army green color and the Alpine green is more of a metallic green with a bit more depth. But overall, nothing super wild or crazy. In other iPhone news, the SE is back and well, it looks about the same as it did the last time we saw it in 2018. So, what's new? Well, the SE now comes with the same A15 Bionic chip you'd find in the more expensive iPhone 13. So what's the trade-off? Well, the SE only comes in three colors: Starlight, Midnight, and Apple's Product Red. You'll also immediately notice that this new SE looks an awful lot like the old SE, and that either doesn't bother you or is an immediate turnoff. However, one of the benefits of the old design is the return of Touch ID on an iPhone. So, there's that. In terms of the camera, you're getting a single 12 megapixel sensor, presumably the standard wide-angle lens, and because it runs on iOS 15, you will also get all the software goodies, including all the fancy camera modes, so all in all, not a bad package. But what about the price? iPhone SE will start at $429 for a 64 gig model and up to $579 for the 256 gig model. But that's enough about iPhone, let's talk about iPad. iPad announcements were short and sweet this time around with a soft refresh of the iPad Air, which now comes with the M1 chip, which, might I add, shouldn't go unnoticed. This now puts it in competition with its bigger sister, the iPad Pro. The new refreshed Air also has a faster USB-C port and comes in a fresh new blue color. Pricing starts at $599 for the 64 gig model and goes up from there. All right, now for the good stuff. Let's talk Apple Silicon and, more importantly, M1. So to quickly catch you up, Apple launched their original M1 chip in late 2020, and since then have upgraded it to the newer M1 Pro and M1 Max, and now there's an even more ludicrous M1 in town, the M1 Ultra. And as you could expect, the M1 Ultra is roughly 2 times more powerful than the M1 Max. How, you might ask? Well, that's because the M1 Ultra is effectively 2 M1 Max chips sewn together to make one Ultra Max M
Mega chip.
But what does that mean? Well, in short, it means huge performance increases over the already insane M1 Max, and if you're a developer, you'll be happy to know that Apple's method for joining these two chips is non-intrusive and allows existing software to recognize the newly conjoined twins as one singular chip, which means apps and software will simply just run better with little to no optimization or updates needed. Which, might I add, is a good thing, because nothing sucked more than having to wait for everyone to update their apps to be optimized for the original M1. So thank you, Apple. In terms of the other technical jargon, the M1 Ultra is a 20-core CPU with up to a 64-core GPU, up to 128 gigabytes of unified memory at 800 gigabytes per second of memory bandwidth. But the lingering question that remains is, where is this chip going to live? Well, arguably the most exciting announcement was the new Mac Studio and Studio Display. If you're familiar with the Mac Mini, then the Studio won't surprise you in size and design. While it is different, it maintains a small package with minimal design and is purposefully built to sit under your display. In your, studio. Speaking of displays, Apple's new Studio Display is a 5K 27-inch P3 color accurate monitor that has an A13 chip built in. Yeah, basically a big iPhone. That enables some nice features like center stage, spatial audio, and so on. Oh, and did I mention this display has a pretty stellar speaker system, mic array, and a camera? Kind of the reason for the A13 chip. Despite all that though, it only has 600 nits of brightness, which in my opinion is a bit of a letdown, as well as no mention of ProMotion, so don't get your hopes up. It does, however, come with a tilting stand, unlike the Pro XDR display, similar to the iMac, but if you want the ability to add height adjustment to the mix, that'll cost extra. There's also a VESA mount option, but that model can only be VESA mounted, so keep that in mind. Pricing for the Studio Display starts at $1,599, but can creep upwards to $2,300 if you opt for the fancy Magic Stand and the special nano-coated glass. But let's talk more about Mac Studio. So the base model Studio will come configured with an M1 Max, 32 gigabytes of unified memory, 512 gigabytes of storage, several Thunderbolt 4 USB-C ports, 10 gigabit Ethernet, HDMI, 2 USB-A ports, a high impedance headphone jack, and an SDXC slot. Pricing for this model will start at just under $2,000, which, mind you, is exactly the same entry price of a 14-inch M1 Pro MacBook, which, just to let you know, is kinda a steal if you already have a solid display and peripherals to pair it with. Just saying. Bumping up to the M1 Ultra will also bump you into the next tax bracket, as it comes configured with, of course, the M1 Ultra, 64 gigabytes of unified memory, and a terabyte of storage for almost exactly double the price at just under $4,000. But for that $4,000, you are getting essentially double the computing power, double the storage, all in the same package. So while it's not really a deal in comparison to the other models, you probably don't really care because either A, your work calls for it, or B, you're just a baller, and Apple's here for it. So do your thing. In any case, if you can't afford a Mac Studio, I'm almost certain there will be a plethora of Mac Pro systems on the secondhand market very soon. Just a hunch. In terms of availability, M1 Studio systems are available for pre-order now and should begin shipping late this month and arriving in early April, pending your configuration. The Studio display can be expected to follow suit. So that was the Apple event in a nutshell. I do plan to do a separate video about whether or not it's worth upgrading, so if you're interested in hearing more about that, make sure to like this video, and of course, make sure to subscribe. You can also find me on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at 24concept. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Alright, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Are you ready?